This is Lauren Dunlap, Executive Director for Advocacy and Awareness for Immune Disorders Association, or AAIDA, in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I'm so happy to host today's webinar. AAIDA exists to provide support and advocate for the greater than 25 million Americans living with immune disorders. AAIDA works to promote research and create better awareness for immune disorders. This is AAIDA's sixth webinar for 2022, and we will be joined today by Dr. Michael Rigas, who's PharmD, and he will be discussing patient assistance plans for high-cost prescriptions. Dr. Rigas is a retired Chief Clinical Officer, co-founder and principal at a national infusion therapy company dedicated to managing IVIG and other chronic and acute therapies. Prior to this, Dr. Rigas was Associate Chief Innovation Officer for Pharmaceutical Care for Gensinger Health Systems and Chief Clinical Officer for Vital Line CareSite Pharma Services. Dr. Rigas has served as the Senior Vice President of Clinical Affairs at Crescent Healthcare in Anaheim, California, a large alternate site pharmacy company specializing in infusion and specialty pharmacy therapies. Dr. Rigas graduated from USC School of Pharmacy with his PharmD degree and completed his residency at UC San Francisco Hospital and Clinics in 1982. His areas of expertise include antimicrobial therapy, immunoglobulin therapies, nutritional support, and many others. And Dr. Rigas is also happens to be chair of the AAIDA Medical Advisory Board as well. Thank you, Dr. Rigas, for volunteering your time to do this today. I'll let you have the floor.
All right, thank you, Lauren, for that kind introduction, and good morning, everybody. I'm speaking to you from northern San Diego County today, so I'm not sure where you are in the rest of the world, but I'm going to start stepping through the slides, and as Lauren said, we'll reserve time at the end for questions and answers. Let me get my slides going here. So the topic today, we've decided to call it Maneuvering Through Patient Assistance Programs for High-Cost Biologic Therapies, and the objectives are today to understand why do we even need patient assistance programs to help patients afford their out-of-pocket costs. That's always a major question. Why are drugs so expensive? So we want to understand the actions that payers take to minimize their spend of these high-cost therapies, understand the impact of if the patient can't afford it, what happens if they don't take the drug, what happens to their medical conditions, understand what patients, physicians, and pharmacies can do to help patients minimize the impact of payer-induced out-of-pocket cost, and understand the role that financial assistance programs play in reducing the out-of-pocket cost of patients. And there are several kinds of plans we'll discuss today, and I have an actual spreadsheet I'm going to show you later on. So there are plans that are made and managed by the drug company who makes the drug to begin with. There are nonprofit groups who offer money that they get from the drug company plans, mostly for patients who have Medicare and Medicaid, and we'll see why that is. Then there are some government-based plans, like for the state of New Jersey and New York, et cetera. They offer low-income subsidy plans. And then many pharmacy companies that do the infusion or provide the specialty pharmacy products, they may have their own plan. And then finally, there are some non-insurance-based plans, especially the one that we all know about called Good RX, which we see advertised a lot. And that is a very unique plan, which we'll discuss, which doesn't fit any of the above. And most patients that use it are happy to use it, but they don't exactly realize where it fits in the grand scheme. So we'll talk about that. So there are lots of terms and acronyms, and we'll just want to talk for a second about them. So an authorization, I was going to put these in alphabetical order, but it didn't quite come out that way. But authorization is what the insurance company gives to a pharmacy to say we are going to pay for this drug therapy and how much we're going to pay the pharmacy and how much the patient has to pay. A copay is one of the amounts of money the patient has to pay in order that they have some, as we'll see in a minute, some skin in the game according to what the payer thinks, so that the patient has some financial responsibility and they don't take everything the doctor prescribes and get it for free. There was some new problems we're going to discuss today about copay non-accumulator, and that is sometimes when the insurance company can say if you get your out-of-pocket money from a financial assistance program, it's not going to count your total out-of-pocket for the year, although it may provide coverage for that particular prescription you're picking up that day. A deductible is what happens before your insurance actually kicks in. A lot of times there's a $250 deductible to start, and then the max out-of-pocket is your insurance company may say that you have to pay $3,000 or $4,000 or even $12,000 max out-of-pocket per year in order that the insurance company pays full for the rest of everything else. And that varies on your policy. The donut hole is part of the Medicare Part D program, and we'll talk about that later, but the donut hole really is a strange place where after you get to say $2,500 worth of spend for a year, then the patient has to pay everything from $2,500 to maybe $4,000, and then after that, the catastrophic coverage kicks in, and that is where they pay everything except 5%, and that continues on forever in the Medicare Part D program. Maybe we will have another webinar in the near future about how the new Inflation Reduction Act is going to be making dramatic changes to Medicare Part D, and that would include the donut hole and catastrophic. So Lauren and I will talk about the potential for having that as a subject in the future. Eligibility is the concept, did you even pay your insurance, or whoever pays for insurance, did they pay it for that month? So you actually have an insurance plan in place. Benefit design is, do you have the ability to get it in the home as a retail prescription at a retail pharmacy, or do you have the benefit that will allow you to get it in an infusion center if it's an infused drug, or in a nursing home if you're in a nursing home? And also the benefit design includes the concept of whether it's the medical benefit, that is when we bill major medical insurance company like commercial plans, that includes hospitalization and doctor's office and home infusion, or is it a pharmacy benefit where all you get is the drug like in a retail pharmacy? And then finally, for today's discussion, the patient assistance plan is typically defined as monies that may be available to a qualifying patient from some source that is either the drug company, or it is a 501c3 foundation group, or a state-sponsored program like we said before. And then a financial assistance plan, although seeming the same, we typically use that definition to be a program that would be offered by your pharmacy company itself. So not every company has that, and it may be that some pharmacy company can get some money from the drug company, some from a 501c3, and offer some assistance themselves, and all three places, all three programs may be put together in order to benefit the patient. And then secondly, the last, the site of care is, are you going to get it at home if it's an infusible or injectable drug, or are you going to get an infusion center or doctor's office infusion center or nursing home? And then finally, administration, who's going to give it? If it is at home, does a nurse have to come and do it? Is somebody else going to come and do it, or could you do it yourself? And then finally, the true out-of-pocket, that is the total cost to the patient for the whole year. That includes all your copay, deductible for all your drugs, including also your insurance premium if you have to pay that yourself. So if you're paying, say, $500 a month for your insurance, and then you had to pay, say, $4,000 for your maximum out of pocket, then you might consider 500 be 6,000 a year plus 4,000 be 10,000 a year true out of pocket, and that can vary dramatically based on what insurance you have, whether it comes from your employer or Medicare, etc. So with those as the definitions, then let's just look at some of the facts. So many of these high-cost therapies may cost the insurance company $50,000 to $100,000 a year or more. Most insurance companies have programs to make the patient pay some portion of the bill out of pocket, and these can be deductibles or copays, and the patient out of pocket may vary in proportion to the cost of the medication or the preferred drug formulary or FDA approved indication. So it's very complicated. If it's a drug they don't like because they being the insurance company have to pay more for it, then probably the patient's gonna have to pay more as their deductible or copay. Not deductible, sorry, copay. And if it is a drug that is inexpensive and the insurance company doesn't have to pay much for it, then the copay for the patient may be less. And as far as the formulary goes, they may have several drugs they like for whatever reason. And if you want one of those, your out-of-pocket may be less. If you need to have a special drug that isn't on the formulary, isn't the preferred, then they're probably going to charge you more. And the patient pay part is intended to cause the patient to have, and I say, some skin in the game, so they think twice before agreeing to a therapy that is prescribed for them. They want to make sure the patient is talking to their doctor. What's the side effects? How soon am I going to get better? Am I going to be able to afford the out-of-pocket before I even start? So this skin in the game concept is intended to align the needs of the patient, the doctor, and the payer, even though sometimes it causes great heartache for the patient. Finally, there are complex regulatory requirements and business models that apply that can directly affect the patient. So some contracts between the payer and the pharmacy may not allow patient assistance plans to be given. Some government programs like Medicare and Medicaid, patient assistance plans are the ones from drug companies are strictly forbidden because they're considered to be fraudulent behavior, but a 501c3 nonprofit plan could help a patient that has Medicare or Medicaid to afford. So understanding these rules and regulations is complicated and helps to learn more about it, what we're going to do today. And then finally, the patient's non-compliance with prescribed regimens, even though the patient may say, I'll take it every other day, or I'll take it every third day, or I'm going to skip a week because I can't afford it. Obviously, those things are going to cause harm to the patient. Whatever that disease is that's being treated is not going to be under as good a control as it would otherwise be. And that non-compliance can cost the patients significant impact on their health, as well as the length of their life and other quality of life issues. So here's a diagram that I use to show how the patients are in the middle of what I call an outpatient pharmacoregulatory storm. And here, if we start from upper left, we can see the federal government has Medicare pricing, regulatory compliance, FDA, DEA, healthcare reform, and fraud and abuse are all federal government programs or concepts. The state government has Medicaids. The Board of Pharmacy has control over the pharmacy licenses and regulations, and Department of Health has issue over the nursing regulations that would go on. The manufacturer, of course, they want to make money on the drug, and each product that a patient needs has some sort of a life cycle focus. That is, a drug that just came out, or one that's been out for 20 years, or is soon to go generic. And that life cycle focus can have an impact on the financial goals and pricing for that drug. Also, the FDA controls what the drug company can say to payers and advertising and doctors. And then finally, the manufacturer may offer a patient assistance plan to help. It isn't mandatory, and they vary widely, as we'll see. The payer wants to save money, and they may impose complex authorization rules for high-cost therapies. So they want to make sure that they're not going to be paying for these drugs if the patient's diagnosis doesn't meet their criteria. Sometimes there are multiple payers involved, Medicare, managed care, etc. So that can make it very complicated for the patient and the pharmacy to figure out who to bill, how to bill, and how much out of pocket. And then, as we said earlier, some of the prescriptions we're going to fill are on the pharmacy benefit, which is a retail pharmacy like CVS, and others are on the medical benefit. That would be the same group that pays for hospitalization and for your doctor's office. And then, of course, the patient wants to save money, wants to decrease their out-of-pocket. They want to get served fast, which in many cases is in opposition to the payer, who wants to slow things down and make sure they analyze it. They may not be aware of all the details of their own payer. They may not be aware of the payer's rules that may apply to their disease or the drug, and they may not be able to afford their out-of-pocket. And then finally, the physician obviously wants to have less hassle, wants to decrease legal exposure, may not be aware of the payer's authorization rules, just like the patient may not be, and may not be aware of infusion setup rules. That is, if you want to get a drug infused at home in a non-hospital setting, the payer may have rules about, we only do this drug at home, or only do this drug in infusion center, etc. And then I have included the hospital here, even though typically they're not involved with every IV therapy patient, and high-cost biologics may be less, but obviously the hospitals, they want to get you out fast. They have case management, a referral process that helps get the patient referred out of the hospital. That can vary dramatically. It may be difficulty in coming to agreement on how they approach infusion. That is, that some hospitals may only use one company. They may send out prescriptions through other third-party systems, so it makes it another difficulty. So the patient is pretty much stuck in the middle of all this. And when we do questions at the end, if you want to ask more about this, this is intended to show the patient, and I always think about these chronic diseases that we deal with at AAIDA. Sometimes it takes years or months to be diagnosed. Sometimes then you realize there's a drug therapy you can get, and then just when the prescription happens and you think that you're going to be getting better fast, then you realize you're in the middle of all these people who are trying to do things. In some cases, they think to help you, in some cases to think to help themselves, but the patient is in the middle. So the physical side of administration for an IV or IM med, it can be in a hospital, it can be a hospital inpatient, hospital outpatient, a doctor's office, a patient's home, an ambulatory infusion center, and in most cases, the site is chosen based on clinical need, and I'm talking in this case about IV or IM drugs that would have to be given either by the patient trained to do it or a nurse coming to do it. But so the clinical need, do we need to have them observed and be near an emergency room, or do we need to have them near the doctor's office, or can we have a nurse do it at home? And then also, as we saw before, there are rules and regulations about which drugs can be given where, as well as which drugs are FDA approved to be given where. So then we have the route of administration, whether it's given IV or sub-Q or orally. And that obviously, if it's oral, it's much less of a problem. But if it's IV or sub-Q or IM, then that could fall into all these regulatory control. And then if it's an IV med or sub-Q or IM, the first dose can be an issue because there might be worry about adverse drug reactions. So the first dose may need to be done in a controlled setting, such as a hospital outpatient or doctor's office, or you may need to meet certain criteria to get it done in the home setting. And then IV pumps and IV drug compounding may be required in order to get the drug into your house in a way that you can actually infuse it. So all these things are issues, and they affect the price, and they affect how much the insurance company wants to pay, and that, of course, directly affects how much your out-of-pocket is. So here's a cartoon of what the referral process looks like. It has many steps, and it's important for the patient to understand how this works. So if you're in the hospital or you're in a doctor's office or the ER, and they decide you need outpatient IV or injectable therapy, they're going to call an infusion pharmacy, and here we see the terms that we just saw. So the first thing the infusion pharmacy will do, or even a real pharmacy like a retail pharmacy, they'll check to see that you even have insurance. That's your eligibility. They'll check to see what kind of benefit you have. That is, can you get it at home, or do you have to be in an infusion center or wherever? Then they'll check to see if authorization is possible. That is, will the insurance company authorize the infusion to be done or the drug to be filled? And if so, they'll give you then a number of how much the pharmacy will get paid, and then also how much the patient has to pay. Then we have to look at the patient's true out-of-pocket. If the patient, for example, if it's, say, $500 a month is the patient's out-of-pocket cost, and the patient says, I can't afford that, then the pharmacy should start looking for patient assistance plans that we'll talk about in a minute that the patient be eligible for, or the pharmacy may also have its own program that it can combine with these other programs to make a total package for the patient. Additionally, if this therapy is on for life or for 3 months or 6 months, whatever, we have to look at the true out-of-pocket because this resets every January. So for example, if you had a $4,000 out-of-pocket and you met that in June, then you wouldn't be paying much or anything for the rest of the year, but then it's going to reset again in January. So we need to make sure the patient knows that when they finally hit the place where the drug is covered and fully and they don't have to pay anything, that is only a temporary reprieve and that this is going to reset again in January. And sometimes the choice of drug is important. Yesterday, I talked to a patient who needed an oral drug that a certain dose would have been $300 a month for a certain size of that drug. And then if they got a different size that was more common, is only $6 a month. So obviously the choice of the drug itself, as well as the size, shape, and maybe even whether it's brand or generic, can be important. Then we talk about nursing needs. Is nursing needed at all if in the home to come and train the patient or administer? And then after all this happens, then we're going to figure out the site of care, or the home, an infusion center, nursing home, other. And then finally, we're going to call up the doctor and discuss with him or her the ultimate plan for this therapy, as well as then inform the patient if any changes were made either to the drug or the frequency in order to make it all work properly, and then the therapy will be initiated. So this is a much different than a retail pharmacy prescription at CVS, although many of the things are still done the same. All this eligibility, benefits, and authorization is all done online at a CVS. The patient's out of pocket, they tell you right then what it is. They may not, or may help you with maybe a good RX card or something. We'll talk in a minute. And obviously if it's a retail pharmacy, the site of care is home because you're taking oral medication. So for IV and high cost biologic therapies, this is a special subset of what you normally get at a CVS. So then let's just look, it's really important to figure out what kind of insurance you have. And many patients know they have insurance, but they don't really think about it as defining how much their out-of-pocket's going to be, as well as whether they can afford it or not, and even more importantly, which financial assistance plans are available to them if they need to be assisted. So I'm just going to talk very briefly. Medicare Part B pays the pharmacy at a very low rate, so they may not even be able to provide the therapy because the Medicare rate may be less than the drug cost. Pre-authorization is not available, so Medicare Part B has rules. You know what they are, but you can't call them and say, gee, will you cover this drug for my patient? Usually there's a 20% copay for Medicare Part B, unless you have a supplement or secondary. And the drug maker FAPs, I'm sorry, it's a typo, it should be PAPs, don't apply, and nonprofit PAPs may apply, as well as there may be other things that can be done. But if you have Medicare Part D, only the drug is covered, usually at a reasonable cost, but if you need nursing or mixing or anything else, it may be a problem. The per diem, the drug coverage does not include supplies, delivery, patient management fees. The true out-of-pocket and donut hole can equal 20% of the cost or more. Some patients needing IVIG, for example, or other expensive drugs, their total bill may be $200,000 a year, and they may have to pay $20,000 a year out of pocket in order to afford that. So it can be very daunting. There is a complex formulary and approval process. Pre-authorization is available and needed, and drug maker PAPs do not apply, and nonprofit FAPs may apply to these, as well as up here in Medicare Part B. So that limits the amount of kind of financial assistance plans are available for both Medicare Part B and Part D. If we get to Medicaid, that is a state-based program for typically for indigent patients. Some patients have Medicare and Medicare Part B and Medicaid both. Excuse me, and the rules vary by state. They cover a broader range of diagnoses, pay the pharmacy at reasonable rates. Their out-of-pocket may be zero if you have a subsidy because you're low income, or the out-of-pocket levels may be up to 20% for other patients. The drug maker PAPs don't apply, and nonprofit may apply. So again, complicated. And then finally, for commercial payers like Blue Cross and Blue Shield, they cover for many more than FDA-approved indications, where Medicares and Medicaids typically are saying that it's not FDA approved for this diagnosis, we're not paying. They use a proprietary pre-authorization criteria, usually on evidence-based literature like papers to show that this drug actually works for this disease. And the policies can vary from complex and comprehensive to very basic of what is covered. For IV drugs, they favor home over an ambulatory infusion center typically, but some prefer to get an AIC. It's not clear why. Typically, they allow infusion pharmacists to provide care in multiple settings. That is, you can do it at home, or you can do it at an infusion center, or you can do it in a nursing home, or sometimes even we have patients that are in a hotel or going on a trip in a boat or something like that. or flying an airplane to a different state, they typically allow all those things if they're set up. And then they allow the use of FAPs and PAPs, but some payers have clauses that prohibit this, because in the payer's contract, when the patient signs it, or his company or her company signs it, they're agreeing to the contract with the insurance company, and they make these out-of-pockets to make the patient think twice. And if somebody else is giving the patient the money for their out-of-pocket, then that thwarts the insurance company's goal of having control over you by making sure that you have some financial pain. So there may be rules that prohibit this on certain insurance companies' contracts. So these issues can be complex. The true out-of-pocket is important, and there are multiple complex and non-patient-friendly issues. Like the patient may expect to not have to pay much or anything. The price resets in January. The patients that have multiple third-party, like if husband and wife are both insured, and there's and maybe one of them has Medicare as well, trying to figure out how to bill all those people and how much the out-of-pocket is complicated, because there are rules about which insurance pays first and which insurance pays second, and what the final amount for the patient is. So it's good to have all that coverage for the patient. It's bad for the patient and the pharmacy to figure out how to apply it. The Medicare Part D is a donut hole, which we said the good news is it's going away as part of the Inflation Reduction Act. It's hard to predict the patient out-of-pocket over a year's time, because the therapy may change. You may change the dose or drug. You may change how much nursing you need, or it may just reset again in January, and therefore you may be surprised when January comes, when your prescription gets filled and they say, oh, by the way, you owe money again, when you hadn't been paying maybe for the last half of the previous year. So persistence and compliance, that is, how often does the patient get their prescription filled, and compliance is how often do they take the prescription. That may be dramatically affected by all those above. The patient can't afford it, they're waiting for their month to end so they can refill it again, etc. And that may result in the patient's disease state getting worse again, or maybe not getting as better or staying as better as it might have been before. And then finally, there are nursing issues. If you need a nurse to come to your house to infuse the drug or teach you, then there is usually a copay associated with that is added to the copay for the drug. So, and some payers have rules, like you can only have so many nursing visits in a year in order to control costs. So again, that may be a difficulty. So the patient, physician, and pharmacy issues are how to respond. And this is where we get into the nitty-gritty of this. If you're a patient, how do you respond when a patient out-of-pocket cost is not affordable by the patient, and the therapy is not going to start rapidly or not at all until you figure out how to do it? So we'll talk in a few minutes about what you should expect from your pharmacy, either infusion pharmacy or specialty pharmacy. They should be doing most of the work for you, but they may be the ones that are the first ones to tell you that you have out of pocket how much it is, and it might be quite shocking to you as the patient until you sit down and talk with these people, talk to your pharmacy, understand how much and why and what can be done about it. So what's done about it is the pharmacy may ask the doctor to write a letter of medical necessity and send that to the insurance company, or the pharmacy may write it for the doctor to sign that explains why this drug is necessary if an authorization was not immediately available. The differences in the payer-patient acceptance criteria. Some companies have 24 pages of rules about a certain disease, like myasthenia gravis, for example, or multiple sclerosis, about what drugs they pay for under what circumstances. And other companies may have a very minor list, maybe only 2 pages. So there's a big difference. And most pharmacy companies understand and have lists of all the payer-patient acceptance criteria. There's also disease specific. So pre-authorization is the next step. Then the pharmacy needs to get authorization that the insurance is going to pay and how much your out-of-pocket is going to be. And that takes a lot of time and may have to go back, as we said earlier, change the drug, change the dose to get something that is the least costly for the patient and agreeable by the physician. The patients desire customer service functionalities, and that is the pharmacy should be calling on your behalf, should be doing all these things with the doctor's office, and they should be getting back to you so you know what's happening. Like sometimes you'll get a prescription for a high-cost biologic, say for arthritis, and you'll get it today. And in the best sense, probably by Friday, they'll be calling you back, say, okay, we got authorization, we can start next week. In the worst sense, the authorization may not be honored or available right away. The insurance company may push back. They may have to call the doctor to produce a letter of medical necessity. They may have to get more labs, etc. And whatever they're doing, they should be letting you know that there's been a delay, and this is how long it's going to be. This is what we're doing about it. In some cases, there are companies that do this better than others. In many cases, we hear patients complaining that no one called them to tell them exactly what was happening. The reimbursement levels can be complex and unpredictable. As we said, it may change by the brand or generic of the drug. It may change by the size of the pill or the size of the dose. It may change by time of the year, especially at the end of the year. Each insurance company makes changes, and the drug you are on now may be, that's on their formulary this year, may not be next year. And therefore, if you're on a drug, say an IVIG like Privigen, that could be on the formulary for a certain company this year. Everything is fine, and you might get a letter in December that says it's no longer our preferred product. These are the preferred products. We expect you to switch by January 1st, and you have to talk to your doctor about it. So they can be very difficult to deal with. Ordered drugs may not be available. There's obviously shortages and delays in shipping, especially because of COVID. But now, unfortunately, remember Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico about 5 years ago and caused a significant shortage because a lot of drugs are made in Puerto Rico. And now we just had Hurricane Fiona, which I think will be seeing some significant shortage coming up in the next several months as a result of that. So then if you owe, say, $500, how are you going to pay it? Are you going to pay cash? Are you going to pay a credit card? Some pharmacy companies may allow you to have a payment plan. Like, say, for example, if your out of pocket for the whole year is going to be, say, I'll just make up a number, 5,000, and in the first part of the year it's going to be more, and eventually by the end of the year you may be having no out of pocket. So they may say, instead of paying 1,000 a month for 3 months and then 500 a month for a couple of months and then nothing the rest of the year, let's divide it up by 12, and maybe you're going to pay $500 a month for the whole year. So they may offer you a payment plan that, in connection with some financial assistance, may be an overall benefit to the patient to have the same, like the Edison company does that for patients who have high air conditioning bills in the summertime. They space it out over the whole year. So oddly, the patient's exact diagnosis may dramatically impact out-of-pocket costs. And that is the diagnosis, if it is something that the drug is FDA approved for, that may cause the insurance company to pay for it differently than if it was not FDA approved, and or it may mean, especially for IVIG and a few other drugs, if you have Medicare Part B, it pays if the drug is FDA approved for that disease under the Medicare Part B, as we just saw. But if it wasn't FDA approved, your diagnosis, then it would pay under Medicare Part D, and then the donut hole and the catastrophic would apply. So the diagnosis may dramatically impact a patient that has Medicare Part D, B, and D, where it may not affect a patient who has a commercial insurance. And then next, the physician drug order, whether they order brand versus generic or one brand over another, that could also dramatically impact out of pocket. And finally, the availability of patient assistance plans or financial assistance plans may be unknown to the physician, to the pharmacy, and the patient. So at the time when you need to know this the most, you may not be very aware of it, and you may have to go explore it, or the pharmacy should do this for you. So here is some more details about the patient assistance plan themselves. These are the ones that are made by the drug maker. They usually are managed by online programs. They sometimes give a copay card. They're mostly intended to give indigent coverage. That is, if you lose your insurance or lose your job, they may be able to pay. In many cases, it involves credit. So if I was getting a certain drug for 6 months or a year, and then all of a sudden I lost my job, then that credit may help me figure out how much future I'm going to be able to get from this company, a free drug, based on how much I've used in the past. So that's kind of a thinly veiled thing, like how much have we made on you already? If we made enough on you already, then we're gonna afford you some free drug in the future, but only under very strict conditions. And this kind of a drug assistance plan cannot be applied to Medicare or Medicaid patients because the Medicare and Medicaid are both government payers. And the weird concept here is that if anybody gives you a discount on the drug, it is thought to be influencing you to use that drug more than some other one, and therefore it's thought to be a fraudulent behavior according to the Medicare or Medicaid rules. There are disease-specific programs that are available from these nonprofits, as we talked about. Typically, they get money from the drug makers to apply to Medicare or Medicaid patients because they can't do them themselves. So these nonprofit foundations, we'll see them in a few minutes, they get the money from a drug company and they can use it for patients that have Medicare, Medicaid, or other insurance because it's an unrestricted grant. And in many cases, you must apply to each one separately. Some participate in a group function, a group application function, but not all. And then those can apply to Medicare, Medicaid, but again, they're disease specific, so they may only cover certain diseases, and we'll see them in just a moment, what they look like. So usually these, the financial assistance plan, I'm describing them usually associated with the pharmacy, the infusion pharmacy or specialty pharmacy company themselves. Not all pharmacies offer them. They may be combined with the ones above to give you a combined package. They can't be used with Medicare and Medicaid patients because, again, it's thought to be fraudulent behavior. They may require significant patient financial history. So many times we have to get the patient's taxes, we may have to get their W-2, we may have to get other things, and many patients may be not wanting to share that information, so it becomes a quandary. I need the assistance, but I feel like I don't want to give you all my information, so it can be a slippery slope here. There is help available, but you may not be comfortable giving all the data that you need to qualify. Typically, it's based on the poverty level. So right now, the poverty level for a family of 4 is about $25,000 a year. So many of these programs will give you help if you make up to 3 times the poverty level for a family of 4. But sometimes the company may only do up to 2 times, or they may do 4 times. So it varies, and some companies may not offer them at all. And so if approved, they usually run for a year and have to reapply. That's one of the rules of Medicare. If you do offer financial assistance, it has to be reevaluated every year to see if anything's changed, like if you all of a sudden got your job back, or if you won the lottery or something. They want to make sure that we don't continue affording this to you. And as we discussed earlier, it may include payment programs, a fixed agreed amount per month over the year's variance, over the year versus the variance each month or dosage cycle we talked about. So these are all potential things that could occur based on the company. And some companies may have all these, some may have none of them, some may have some of them. So it varies on company to company, the pharmacy or the specialty pharmacy itself. So now getting into more nitty-gritty, the infusion, especially pharmacy, they should be doing all the work for you. They should be verifying your eligibility. They should verify your benefits. They should get pre-auth. They should do the financial planning. They should ask you, okay, your out-of-pocket's going to be $6,000. Can you afford it? If you say yes, okay, great. How are we going to pay? If you say no, then they say, okay, do you want us to help you figure out financial planning? If you say yes, then they'll go start looking at the list I'm about to show you. And then they would combine PAPs and FAPs and whatever other kind of assistance can be had into a special program just for you. And then they have to follow up with you, the patient, the doctor, if there's a home health agency involved, regarding the authorization and the out-of-pocket solutions, so everybody is on the same page. Because the doctor, if, for example, there is no solution and the therapy doesn't start, the doctor needs to know what else he can do. And if there is a solution, the home health agency needs to know, and the doctor needs to know how it's going to start and what's the plan going to be, so they can be sure the patient's getting the best help. And they should coordinate all the nursing needs at the house. They should mix all the drugs if they need to be mixed, and they should deliver everything so it's in a ready-to-use format at your house. So now we've seen how the insurance works. We've seen what the pharmacy should be doing. Now I'm going to show the patient assistance plan listing that was updated earlier this year. So let me get to it here. Okay. Lauren, I'm not sure if you can talk. Can you see this okay? Is it big enough?
It's kind of small on my screen, but my screen is smaller, so you might want to make it a little larger.
So let me move this thing out of the way here. My screen that controls the program here is in the way. Okay, so here, let me get up to the top of this one. So these are the drug company plans, and I'm going to go from left to right here. So we can see, these are the drug company plans here. So, and they're listed by the company who makes them. Right now I'm going to show you the IVIG ones. So Takeda, they make GammaGuard Liquid, GammaGuard SD, IQVIA and Cuvitru. They have programs. They're only for primary immune deficiency. So if you're getting one of these drugs for CIDP or myasthenia gravis, it doesn't cover. Here's the websites, and they offer deductible, co-payment, co-insurance, savings offers. And the patient here, I talked about credit, that you must be receiving treatment with one of their drugs already. You have commercial insurance that covers it. You have to have lost your insurance, and there's a special application for this. And typically, I think sometimes they're able to tell us, but this is typically about $4,000 a year is what should be in this column, because this one is deductible and co-payment. It isn't listed the total. But here, BPL, who makes Gammaplex, you can see they're offering up to $2,000 a year. And you can see down here, our favorite drug, Privigen, is made by CSL Behring, Privigen, Hizentra. They have a Hizentra program, but they don't have a Privigen program. And you can see all the complex inclusion criteria. And right now, if I slide down a little bit here, they may pay up to $5,000 out of pocket for a person who has Hizentra if you qualify for the program. And also, they may give you a certain 3-month supply of certain grams, depending on how you qualify for the program. So you can see these can be quite complex, and unfortunately, people that are on Privigen and getting it not for getting Privigen, there is no coverage for Privigen, only for Hizentra in this case. There's a lot of people trying to get the Privigen program to occur, but they have not done it yet, and we don't know why. So
we are just tidbit working on that at AAIDA, trying to working with CSL Behring and getting a program in place for patients. So as well, in addition to with some other organizations we're connected to. But we are going to just have a few more minutes, and we're going to open it up to questions. We're about at 15 till the hour right now, and then we're going to open it up to our audience here in just a minute.
Okay, I'll just zoom down here so you can see the other major programs that go for Grifols and Octaforma, and Argenx, which is the new drug Vyvgart, which just came out. And then here is the nonprofit plans. And it's most important to notice, like, for example, the Health Well Foundation, they cover these diseases, which in alphabetical order. So many of them are very rare diseases. So if you had myeloid leukemia, you might be covered. But if you had, for example, primary immune deficiency, we have to go down here, and we don't see like primary immune deficiency listed here, as far as I can tell. The Neuropathy Action Foundation. So some of these offer direct financial assistance, as we can see here, and other ones only offer indirect or do not offer resources to patients at all. This is a foundation that supports patients and help them see other groups that can help them, but only some of these nonprofit plans actually offer cash. And this cash, as we said earlier, is primarily coming from the drug makers, because they know that they can not pay directly for patients that need infusion therapy that have Medicare or Medicaid. So we'll make this list available on the AAIDA website, and therefore anybody who wants to see it can. And I'll stop there and get ready for questions here. So Lauren, you want to oversee the questions, and then we'll see what we have either verbally or electronically, however they're coming.
Yes, so we'll open it up to questions for the last few minutes, and you can type those questions in your bar here. So one specific thing, Dr. Rigas, is why are, well, you kind of touched on this. Why are Medicare and Medicaid excluded from these financial plans? Because I do know here at AIDA, we get a lot of calls, emails, inquiries around patient assistance plans, and it's very frustrating for me personally to tell these patients that are on these type of plans, this is a hard spot because you are on some of these plans. Can you touch a little bit more on the government plans around Medicaid, Medicare, those type of TRICARE and other plans?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Lauren, and it could be the subject of a whole hour of discussion, but I'll try to keep my comments much less than that. So in the eyes of the federal government, your Medicare benefit and Medicaid benefit, they are negotiated with the state government, and are negotiated with insurance companies that may be helping or may be given directly through the Medicare administration for Medicare Part B. However that may be, there are rules and regulations set up around it. And the idea, again, like we said with the insurance companies, the Medicare Part B is set up at 20% copay so that the patient is affected by 20% of the bill. And if you can't pay that copay, then you might have secondary insurance with your husband or wife, or you might have a supplement, like I have a Medicare Part Plan F or J, I think it's a J, that is my AARP supplement plan. So it pays whatever the 20% copay for Medicare Part B would be, my supplement pays that. So, but if you don't have that, you have the 20% you have to pay out of pocket. So say that is $500 a month. And if you got assistance from a drug company directly to you, that would be considered fraudulent behavior, because the drug company is trying to subvert the Medicare program and make you get a drug you couldn't otherwise afford. And therefore the drug company will make more money because they're selling the drug to the Medicare patient, because they're helping the Medicare patient pay their out of pocket. So the rules were set up years ago so that federal government and state government payers do not allow drug company money to be directly funneled to them, because they think the drug company, as we said over here, they want to make more money, okay, and therefore making more money may be helping the patient afford their out of pocket, and therefore subverting the design of the Medicare and Medicaid, that is, the patient has a copay, and therefore the copay causes certain patients to not use certain drugs if they can't afford it. So, and then what the financial assistance plans in, for example, let's say Takeda was the first on our list, they make the drug Gammagar liquid, they may give, like the HealthWell Foundation that I just showed here, they may, if I go back to this, they may, if I go over here to this, the Takeda, since it was on top of the list, they may give, here they are, programs for non-Medicare, non-Medicaid patients, but they may give to the HealthWell Foundation, they may give $10 million a year, and HealthWell can do whatever they want with it. They can pay for all these therapies. They may never use a Takeda drug, or they may always use a Takeda drug, but it's an unrestricted grant, and therefore the direct connection between the drug company giving money to the patient and causing the patient to use their drug, that direct connection, if they give the money to a HealthWell Foundation, for example, that direct connection is now severed, and HealthWell can do whatever they want with the money. So that's why it's considered fraud and abuse to give a Medicare or Medicaid patient a copay assistance that's coming from a drug company, where other 501c3, these foundation ones that are nonprofits, they get the money from the drug maker and other people, but they get to use it for whatever they want. So the drug company does not directly benefit from giving the donation. So I don't know if that's a clear enough answer, but I'll stop there and see if that's enough answer. I'm going to talk about it more.
We talked about Medicaid, Medicare, TRICARE. What about the marketplace plans? Where does this fall? So our audience is aware where those fall into place.
So just to be clear, that when she says marketplace plan, she's meaning the Affordable Care Act plans that are available on a state-by-state basis, and usually they are connected to Blue Cross or Blue Shield or Aetna, whoever, that's somebody offering that plan on behalf of the state of Texas or New Jersey, whatever. So in one hand, and I'm not sure I know a clear answer on this, and I think that's why you're asking, some states and payers believe that this is a privatized government plan and therefore doesn't apply. You can't get a direct benefit from a drug maker, just as if you had regular Medicare Part B, and others think you can. And so and my experience in the last 5 years or so has been that you have to call the company and find out what they think, or look on some kind of a list, because it's not clear, because these are government programs that are outsourced to a private company, and it seems like each of those private companies has their own interpretation of whether a drug company plan can apply or not. And then now, as we talked about, many of the companies are using a copay non-accumulator. So even if they say it applies, it may only apply to that prescription, but not your whole out of pocket for the year. So there is a third component to that may make it more difficult. So there's usually a unique yes or no for each payer patient drug combination, which is very complicated.
Yeah, I feel like that's a gray zone, but I don't want to go down this rabbit hole of.
I'm going to ask a couple of friends of mine who know more about this than I do, and if I get a better answer than that, I'll let you know, Lauren, and you can post it.
Sure. I have one other question. Don't want to go down this rabbit hole. I feel like before I even ask it, I'm going to throw up a disclaimer here and say, even though we only have just a couple minutes left, to educate our audience more around why are drug prices so high around high cost biologic treatments, or just in that area. I mean, I know it's very complex, so we'll just scratch the surface with this answer, if you can, Dr. Rigas.
Yeah, so let me, and I'm going to try to not be on a soapbox here and not give my own opinion and only give fact. So if we look at the facts, in order to bring a new drug out into American people and get it approved by the FDA, typically is costing over between $250 million and $1 billion to bring the drug out and to have it saleable in America. So obviously that's a huge upfront cost. And in many drugs, you get a patent for 17 years or so, but that patent only starts way before the drug is available. So it starts with the patent of the drug molecule or the drug form, and a 17-year patent may only be in effect for 10 years by the drug has finally come out. So they would say, we have to charge more for it to pay for the $500 million it costs us to bring the drug out. So that's the first concept. Second concept is America is one of the only two leading countries that allows for advertising drug therapy at home on TV or magazine. So only America and New Zealand, as far as I know, allow direct to consumer advertising. And you can imagine how much those commercials cost. Okay, so that somebody has to pay for that. And then finally, but the next thing is, many times you may be working the drug for 5 years or more, 10 years before it comes available to be sold. And the day that you sell it, it becomes available, or the first year or second year, maybe a new competitor is going to come on the market that's going to knock you out of your place, or maybe 5 other new drugs in the same, for example, rheumatoid arthritis space may come out. So you may have a drug that is exciting and everybody likes it. And the next thing you know, after 10 years, when you finally get it out, you can have extreme competition, and therefore you may never achieve your goals for that drug as far as how much you want to make. So again, you have to charge more for it up front because you can't see what's going to happen a year or 2 or 5 from now. And also you could have an FDA recall. There could be unknown side effects that occur. There could be a group of lawyers like you see on TV that say, have you taken this drug and suffered this? Okay, and we want to represent you. So it could be that in 2 years after your drug finally gets on the market, you have to take it off the market, or it could be that you have a giant recall and nobody orders it anyway, even if it's still available, FDA approved. So all those things combined together to mitigate against having a low cost. And also, many of the drugs that come out may be redundant. So for example, again, for rheumatoid arthritis, there may be 20 drugs you could choose. You know, you could have Enbrel, you could have Humira, there are self-injectables, you could have Remicade, you could have Actimera, which are all infusibles. So the more and more drugs that come on the market for a given disease, the more competition there is, the less volume any drug has, and therefore the more they have to charge for it in order to make up their investment. In many cases, it may be that these drugs are redundant, as I said, and the only reason they bring them out is because, for example, Wall Street may tell Takeda, if you don't have a drug for arthritis, then we think your portfolio is not complete and therefore you're not very competitive and your stock isn't looking so good. So even non-patient factors can factor in why we have so many drugs for arthritis or why we have so many IVIGs, is because everybody wants to get in on the action. But in some respects, that raises the price as well. So I'll stop there, and I could go on more, but I'll stop there because that may answer the question or may want to ask more questions.
That was great, Dr. Rigas. We are actually out of time, but that was a very nice presentation and breaking down all the things that go into this very broad and complex topic. Thank you again, Dr. Rigas, for being with us this afternoon and volunteering your time to educate our community. And thank you to our audience for joining us today. Please make a note. We are having 2 upcoming webinars. Actually, the first Spanish language webinar we will be hosting is going to be on October the 12th. And then we will have another one on October 19th around cybersecurity. Please visit our website for more information and resources at www.godoaida.org. This is Lauren Dunlap for Advocacy and Awareness for Immune Disorders Association, and we hope you have a restful afternoon. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you, Lauren. Bye.
Thank you.